Welcome back, Hunters. Charge Blade is one of the most unique weapons in Monster Hunter, a personal favorite weapon of mine, so today we're going to go over the basic moves, concepts, and discuss the regular combos and attacks. If you are new to my channel, my tutorials focus on mouse and keyboard, but I vocally describe button names so you can translate to controller if you want. These are the couple keybinds here that I've changed, not a whole lot, but just a little bit more to make Charge Blade a little bit more comfortable. So after you've taken a look at that, let's grab your sacred and head on out. So to start off this tutorial, we'll discuss some of the basic moves and then the concept of Phials before discussing the more complex attacks of Charge Blade. So the first basic attack here, the Charge Blade, is a simple triple sword slash attack. Hitting the normal attack button 3 times launches you into 3 basic sword slash, the weak slash, the return stroke, and the round slash. So pretty simple attack, each hit contributes to your Phial charge buildup, which will be discussed in the Phials section. Another thing to note for the future as well, your shield turns white after the round slash. This is known as guard point, which gives you a brief moment of protection as if you were guarding after your attack. So there are a couple concepts that I will clarify later on in this video. Charge Blade is a weapon that builds on its concept, so the more you learn, the more you can add to your playstyle. In addition to the triple sword combo, you can also add a shield bash at the end of this combo just by clicking the normal attack button and then the special attack buttons at the same time. It's really just a quick finisher for now, you most likely won't be using this combo much. Next up we have the charge slash. Now holding the special attack button for 2 seconds will let you prepare this charge slash, and releasing it will do a strong double slash. You'll be using this skill quite a bit, so you gotta be careful here. If you release too early, you'll do a weakened charge slash. However, if you hold this for too long, you will also do a weakened charge rising slash. So the timing here is really important to release within those 2 seconds. There are 3 indicators to let you know of this timing. So number 1, the position. If you look at your character, the sword will be pulled back completely behind your character. As soon as you see the sword behind your back, release the attack button and you'll do the double slash. The second indicator is there's also a burst of energy that comes off the blade, so you can kind of see a little visual here that there's like a couple sparks that come off. The third is an audio cue, actually, for you audiophiles. A heavy sound that flutter, kind of like a flutter of glass kind of thing. The sound is by far the most accurate cue, followed by the position of the elbow. So that's the charge slash. Hold on to that one because we'll come back to it. The next basic attack that can be performed is the forward slashes. Now pressing both attack buttons at the same time 3 times in a row will perform a forward slash, followed by a shield thrust, and ends with an axe attack known as the amped Element Discharge. The result will leave you in axe mode and you'll need to morph back to sword mode if you complete this. This combo isn't useful for the start of hunts, it'll be used later on, so just keep this in mind for now. For those of you that have played Charge Blade in past games, you may know this, that when your shield is charged, originally this would lead to the super amped Element Discharge. This is no longer the case in Wilds. The regular amped discharge will always be performed first from this combo, and then you'll need a 4th click of both attack buttons to perform the super amped Element Discharge. The final basic sword attack to discuss is the Fade Slash. Now this is a combo attack that must follow up with another sword attack, either a normal or a charged attack. Clicking any direction and then the special attack button following an attack will move your character in that direction while performing a single slash attack. This is not a very high damage skill, but it is a mobility skill to clear you of danger or reposition while still outputting some damage. The Fade Slash also exists in Axe mode, and we'll discuss that in the Axe segment. So these are the 4 basic sword attacks. In addition to this, of course, you have a big giant shield. So holding the special action button will enable you to guard attacks. Now this is not a perfect 0 damage guard. Keep in mind that bigger attacks can knock you back. You may take a little bit of damage, right? But the damage is significantly reduced with guard. You can apply decorations or armor skills for Iron Wall, which will reduce the knockback effect of stronger attacks. Now there's another hidden feature known as Perfect Guard, and we'll discuss that in the Perfect Guard section. Now Charge Blade is not only a bigger sword and shield, it also has an axe mode that is created when you combine the two. At the top left of the weapon indicator area, you'll see 3 symbols that represent these 3 modes. Each one can be charged up, and Phials play a big part in charging. So we'll break down the concept of Phials right now. So Phials are essentially a method to enhance the damage of your Charge Blade, either through charging the weapon parts or releasing the Phials as damage. Every basic sword attack mentioned previously actually helps to charge the Phials. The border of the Phials will change color from white to yellow to red as you charge them up, and if you overcharge them, they will actually start brightly pulsing with a deeper red. Now an overcharged weapon means that you have too much energy built up and not being stored in the Phials. Now, you never want this because as you can see, the sharpness indicator has a red outline, indicating that the sharpness isn't viable. This means you can't cut while overcharged and the blade appears glowing hot. So you never want to reach this spot. The sweet spot is that you always want the red glow every time. Now, the fastest method to achieve this is to do one charge slash, followed by a shield thrust, and then another charge slash. Once you have red, you actually need to relieve your blade of that charge and put it into your Phials. Simply clicking the guard button and the special action button will drain all that energy into your Phials. Without any decorations, yellow Phials usually will fill 3 Phials out of the 5. With red charge, you will fill 5 Phials. Now, what's new to Monster Hunter Wilds is that you can actually overcharge your Phials. Once you fill them up once, you can keep charging in the same fashion. Yellow gives 3, red gives 5, and your Phials will soon look like this, kind of like with power exploding out. Now, as it sounds, the overflowing means that the damage from these Phials will be greater and the charging effects will last longer. To be a little bit more specific, as we'll talk about shield charging later on, when you use an overcharged Phial versus a regular Phial, the time your shield will be charged will extend from 2 minutes to 3 minutes and 15 seconds. So this is the start of the cycle of the Charge Blade that you should understand. Charge Blade goes through multiple phases, where phase 1 is charging your Phials, phase 2 is charging your weapon, including your sword, shield, or axe. Once those are filled and charged, then you move on to phase 3 and start using the Phials for damage until they run out, and then you repeat to recharge them again. The last thing to note about Phials is that they can either be impact or element. There's 2 types. Impact Phials induce stun and exhaust damage, while element, as it sounds, will induce additional element damage corresponding to your weapon's element. Any Phial damage will be seen as an additional little burst, like a little explosion that occurs after you hit the target. This includes sword attacks, shield thrusts, and element discharge attacks from the axe. It's important to note that Phial damage ignores monster body weaknesses, so they're actually pretty consistent across the body, but they also cannot crit. So in general, it's always good to have your Phials charged up 100% just to be able to get extra damage for every swing that you take at the monster. Now that you have a basic understanding of the Phial system, let's talk about their uses. So the first and main one that we mentioned was charging your weapon parts, specifically the shield. Phials are used to charge a shield, and then in turn a charged shield can charge your sword. Technically speaking, the axe doesn't require Phials to charge, nor does it need the shield to be charged, but it will require your Phials to be filled in order to output Phial damage. So the shield is something that you always want charged. In addition to enabling your super attack, the super amped Element Discharge, a charged shield also absorbs more impact when you block monster attacks, so your knockback effect is reduced. The sword or axe may not always be necessary. It really depends on which attack mode you use more often, and that's something that you pick as you develop your playstyle and see the more advanced skills later on. So there are a few ways to charge your shield, but a newer and quickest method added in Wilds is actually to continue from how you normally charge your Phials. Once you see the Phial indicators fill up, click and hold the special attack button again to actually move into the shield element boost. You'll see the recently filled up Phials drain into the shield, and the shield indicator will start to glow in the top left. So this is method 1, definitely the easiest method. Since the shield should always be charged in a hunt, it seems like Capcom created this method just to make it easier to maintain the shield charged throughout a hunt. The second method is to perform the forward slash combo previously mentioned. As you perform the third action, the amped Element Discharge, click the special weapon action button to cancel the attack and perform an elemental round slash. This performs a spinning animation which drains your Phials into your shield, and at the end of the spin you push out your shield and perform a guard point. So that's the second method, and the final point for this is that this can actually occur anytime you do an amped Element Discharge. It doesn't need to be just from this first combo. So there are several other ways to reach the amped Element Discharge. Perfect Guard is one that we'll talk about later on, but in this example here, there's no shield charge, so I use the Perfect Guard to block the attack. I immediately initiate an amped Element Discharge and then immediately go into the elemental round slash. This is something common that can happen during a hunt, so if you don't have time to actually use the first method, you don't have the protection, you can use a Perfect Guard to protect yourself and then get your shield charge all in one animation. Now once your shield is charged, you can actually charge your sword, and this doesn't use Phials as a reminder. We start again with the same motion of filling your Phials. Regardless if you have Phials or not, since they don't matter, you can hold the normal attack button for 2 seconds and you'll see the animation change to point your sword upward and then descend into your shield. Once it fully descends, the animation looks like the shield is just kind of closed in on the sword. Sparks will fly out to indicate that the sword is charged. After this, for a certain limited time, every sword slash will deal Phial damage even without the Phials being filled. Now we finally move on to charging the axe. Now this is a little more complicated and we'll discuss all of the axe in this segment. So first, before we talk about charging or anything, let's talk about how to get to axe mode in the first place. You can manually morph to the axe mode from your sword by holding the guard button and then clicking the normal attack button. If you'd like to revert back from the axe mode to sword, you just need to click the guard button once again and you'll morph right back. This is just for you to know, in case of situations where you need to stop and heal or change weapons or pull out your shield or something to protect yourself. Each of these morphs also has a guard point when you're going from sword to axe. It's near the initiation when your sword slips into the shield. Where you're going from axe to sword, it's actually at the very end of the animation when you spin out and push your shield forward. Now morphing into axe mode doesn't really do anything. The damage and the attacks are not really useful until your axe is charged. And you can't actually even charge the axe while you're in axe mode. So there are 4 methods to charge the axe, but the first 2 I'll talk about are the preferred and most consistent methods. So the first one is performing a perfect guard. Now I mentioned earlier how to guard, but a perfect guard is when you guard exactly as you get hit. So you're not in place holding your shield in position waiting for the attack. You perfectly time that when the monster hits you, you hit the guard button. If you hit this perfect guard, your shield will glow bright for a second and then you'll have a second to perform certain actions. So after hitting the perfect guard, hold the normal attack button and your axe will be charged and you will morph into the axe and perform a savage slash. Now something I want to note here, for charged axes known as power axe, holding the attack buttons actually performs multi-hits. If you simply click and release the attack button, you will morph and you will do a single hit. But if you hold the attack button, as you can see here, you'll perform 5 hits instead of 1. So keep this in mind for all axe attacks going forward. If you release the attack buttons at any point during the multi-hits, that will cancel the rest of the attack. So it gives you a little bit of control as to how many hits you want to fit in a certain window. Now on the topic of perfect guard, there are other actions you can perform, so let's digress here for a moment. Upon hitting a perfect guard, you can also perform the amped element discharge or the super amped element discharge if your shield is charged. If your shield and axe are both not charged, you can still perform an amped element discharge, but it will consume one whole Phial as you see here. Not really worth it. Would be much better to perform the amped element discharge and then do the round slash to charge your shield. If your shield isn't charged but your axe is, this is a little bit more worth because you can hold down both the buttons and perform a multi-hit. So now you're getting substantial more damage for a quick reaction after a perfect guard. Now finally, if your shield is charged as well, then you can perform a super amped element discharge. Now the super amped element discharge is an attack that consumes all your Phials for a strong Phial based attack. Now since this consumes all your Phials at once, you gotta make sure that your Phials are maxed and overcharged before performing this action to get the most damage. Now the super amped element discharge can be performed after any regular amped element discharge. So from other combos or skills, if you perform one amped element discharge, clicking both attack buttons a second time will perform the super amped element discharge. Now after an AED, if you launch the SAED, you cannot take it back. However, if you perfect guard or guard point and then execute a super amped element discharge, you actually have a small window to cancel this and perform a regular amped element discharge. In the animation, the window is actually when the shield is behind your head. While it's behind you, clicking the back movement button and clicking the normal attack button will convert the attack into an amped element discharge. This will result in discharging one Phial instead of all your Phials, so it's particularly useful when you're still learning monster patterns or maybe you launch this preemptively but the monster moves and you know you're going to miss all your Phials. If you're being attacked while executing an amped element discharge, your best bet is actually to click the special action button and perform the element round slash. This is the exact same as method 2 to charging your shield, so it will consume all your Phials, but at the end of the animation, it pushes your shield out and you have guard point that can absorb extra damage, potentially saving your life. So that's perfect guard and the super amped element discharge. Going back to original programming, we were discussing charging your savage axe, so let's talk about the second method. The focus mode is a cool new mechanic added in Monster Hunter Wilds, which lets you focus on certain body parts of the monster. So while you are in focus mode, if you perform the focus slash double ren, this performs a sword double slash, and if you accurately hit a wound, you stun the monster and morph into the axe, charge your axe, and perform a large savage slash. So this is a great way to output some great damage and charge your axe at the same time. It's not as consistent as the perfect guard since you can guard any attack to charge your axe, but it is useful mid-hunt when you've dealt some damage and created several wounds. You can utilize one of the wounds to stagger the monster and charge your axe at the same time. Now while we're on the topic of focus mode, everything else stays the same for all your attacks except one other change. You can actually perform a fade slash immediately at any point while you are in focus mode. This is a great balancing since in focus mode, as you may know, your movement is slowed down, so being able to perform a fade slash grants you the mobility to stay safe while maintaining your focus mode. If you are in sword mode, the fade slash buttons are the same as previously mentioned. If you are in axe mode, fade slash changes to the normal attack button, so any input direction plus the normal attack button will perform a variation of the lateral fade slash. So perfect guard and the focus mode are the two most consistent methods to charge your axe. There are two other methods though, which we'll talk about right now. So the third one is mounting. Now mounting is essentially the same as the focus mode. If you create a wound on top of the monster, the finisher for a mount is actually destroying that wound. So for charged blade, that ends up being the power axe, savage axe slash. Now the final method to charge your axe is the power clash. Now this is a new feature added in Monster Hunter Wilds where shield classes can essentially battle it out 1v1 with a monster with your shield. Power clashes come from perfect guards, and if you succeed in winning the power clash, you can perform one of your three main strong attacks that we've talked about: the savage axe slash, super amped element discharge, or a charge slash. Now the main issue with this is power clashes aren't guaranteed or consistent. It's more like a build up, so the more you perfectly guard a monster at one point, then they will initiate the 1-to-1. And you also can't do this with every monster in the game. So in reality, while you can obtain the power axe from a power clash, it's just something to keep in mind. If it happens, it's great, you can get your power axe, but don't rely on it. Now just to digress for a moment, let's talk about guard point since we've mentioned it a couple times. Guard point is a window when your shield turns white, which occurs after certain actions, such as both methods of charging your shield, the basic sword round slash or fade slash, or midway during a sword to axe morph, or at the end of an axe to sword morph. These essentially give you a little bit of protection while you're still performing other actions. If you are hit while guard pointing, you nullify a large portion of the damage, almost as if you were guarding with a charged shield, and then you can initiate certain actions. Now this probably sounds pretty similar to perfect guard, and it is. The only difference is that you can't actually charge your axe from guard point. So guard point is really focused on protection and your amped element discharge or super amped element discharge. Now this still makes it quite useful, while you're performing other actions you gain that little bit of protection. A great example is, if you use method 1 to charge your shield, maybe you're trying to fit it in a small window, you charge your shield, and then guard point activates, blocks a monster attack, and then you can lead into a combo. Another example is the axe draw attack. If you are re-entering a fight, maybe after healing, if the monster suddenly attacks you, hitting the special weapon action button performs the axe draw smash. Guard point actually occurs right at the start of this animation, so it's almost like performing a perfect guard without your weapon drawn. So it definitely still has its benefits for protections, and if there's an opening after guard point, you can get some damage with the amped element discharges. Now finally, the last basics to cover here are the axe attacks. In my opinion, axe mode is not really worth without charging. The attacks are greatly enhanced, you can deal multi-hits, and the benefit of focusing axe mode is that you don't really need to worry about the sword and shield. It's pretty much a full playstyle on its own. Additionally, as we'll see in a moment, the power axe greatly reduces the amount of phial charge used for phial discharge attacks, so it lets you continuously hit and output large amounts of damage without pausing to charge your phials. So the first attack here to mention is the mobility attack. Holding the forward button and then pressing the normal attack button in axe mode performs a dash slam. Just a very good way to close the gap, and land some damage on the monster if you're chasing them or if they're after other hunters. As mentioned in the focus mode section, you can also perform lateral fade slashes when in focus mode. Otherwise, you need to perform the lateral slashes after another attack like the dash slam. The first axe attack combo is the basic rising slash. Now holding the normal attack for 2 seconds while standing performs a multi-hit upward, and then clicking and holding the normal attack again for 2 seconds performs an overhead slash down. These attacks don't consume any phials, so you can perform them anytime while you're charged without phials, and the damage would be the same. Now while you are in axe mode, you can also perform an amped element discharge at any time that you like. As I mentioned before, it technically is an axe attack. So hitting and holding both attack buttons will perform a regular amped element discharge, and since you are holding the buttons again, it'll perform a multi-hit. As you can also see, because we're in Power Axe mode, we use half a phial instead of a full phial for one amped Element Discharge. Next up is the Element Discharge attacks, and this is the prime bread and butter, especially if you're using an Impact Phial Axe. Element Discharge is another 2-click combo using the special attack button. Holding the special attack button for 2 seconds to perform Element Discharge 1, then clicking and holding for another 2 seconds to perform the Element Discharge 2. So some great damage from these attacks, and while you are charged, the Element Discharge attacks actually do not consume phials, but they do output phial damage. So it's a very great attack to apply a lot of phial damage to any body part that you're aiming for. Additionally, if you hold the forward key while performing the first Element Discharge, you will do a rushing Element Discharge, so that just moves you forward. If you just hold the attack buttons, you're just going to swing in your current position. Now, one really cool neat thing about this is that while Element Discharges output phial damage, they still need the phials to be filled, even if they don't actually consume them. So Capcom has made a quick way to fill your phials and then morph directly into the Element Discharge. So say for example, you use all your phials in a super amped Element Discharge, return to sword mode, charge your phials and then fill them. This example represents this situation, so here we are charging our phials, then we're going to go into filling them. Once they're filled, click the heavy attack button to morph, and then I click it a second time to hold to make sure that I get my multi-hits. The timing is a little bit particular here because you can't hold it while you're still doing the fill animation. You have to hold the attack button after the morph starts. Otherwise, you'll actually do a shield charge instead. So those are the main attacks and skills that you want to use for the Charge Blade. By now, you've probably already seen a couple patterns, so we're going to put these together to see how these combos flow together. One of the best things about the Charge Blade is that it's a very flexible weapon. For different situations, you can combine different attacks depending on your window of opportunity. So let's start with the small one of the Amped Element Discharge. You have several options depending if your shield is charged or not. If your shield is not charged, your only option is to do a new wild skill known as the Amped Element Discharge follow-up. Holding the special attack button after the AED will perform a final spin where you deal much higher damage on the first impact and then proceed to do your regular multi-hits. It's a pretty cool and quick skill, and again it only uses half a phial of energy. If your shield is charged, you have 3 options. Now the first one is you can do it immediately as super amped element discharge as we previously discussed. If you have a small to medium window, this is probably your best bet. If you have a very small window, let's say the monster was knocked and they're just getting back up, you can still perform the AED follow-up swing as if your shield wasn't charged, and that's again by the special attack button. The third option is if you have a much larger amount of time. You can do the AED, followed by a follow-up swing, and then finish with the SAED. Since you are in Power Axe mode, the first 2 attacks will only use half a phial, so you'll still have 4 extra phials for the full Super Amped Element Discharge. All of these are fantastic finishers. The Super Amped Element Discharge of course will consume all your phials, so from a DPS standpoint, it would probably be better to do the AED and then the follow-up and repeat that. But it also kind of depends on the situation. If you know the monster is going to move after this or they're about to die, you might as well just go all out, send all your phials in. Now we can add on a little bit more to this combo. If a monster is knocked, you can actually perform the double element discharge before getting into the AD and then the follow-up finishers. This is really for big openings. So you can see the Rathalos got knocked over again. I perform 2 element discharges and then I do my AED, do my follow-up swing, and then I perform the final SAD to just let go of all my phials. Again, the last super amped element discharge is not entirely necessary. If you want to save your phials, stop at the AED follow-up. That saves you 4 more phials, so then you know rinse and repeat, element discharge, AED, and then follow up again. Now the amped element discharge and the follow-ups after that, they have longer animations. So if you're in a situation where you don't want to take that risk, performing the element discharge 1 and 2 followed by the rising slash is a great way to create a short repeatable combo. The DPS can be slightly higher, but it's not a huge difference, and the greatest benefit is that you have mobility and freedom to stop and reposition at every attack. Another quick combo is if you do a perfect guard, charge your axe, and perform the Savage Axe Slash, you can actually skip Element Discharge 1 right after that and go straight to Element Discharge 2. This one might be a bit of a stretch. I don't think you can really fit it in most of the time when you're perfect guarding. You know, the monster is active, they're attacking you, right? So most likely you won't be able to fit all 3 steps in at every time you perfect guard. But on occasion, there will be situations where your Savage Axe attack will knock the monster or stagger the monster. Then it's perfect, you can go straight to Element Discharge 2. That has higher damage than Element Discharge 1. And you can move on to your AED or your SAED right after that. Now in my opinion, Savage Axe is the way to go for the highest DPS and most consistent damage output. Generally speaking, Axe is more ideal when you are using a charge blade with impact Phials. You can target the head more precisely in order to get some KOs on the monster. With that being said though, the sword and shield is also good to get some good damage. If you're going to be using the sword a little bit more, make sure it's charged up, but of course your big openings, you're going to have to come back to the AED and the SAD. These are still big damage, so you don't need to worry about Axe mode if you don't want to. Phial damage is actually really good. The big struggle is that because you have to recharge and then release your Phials, there's a higher risk with each attack. So you can't really have time to miss, and that requires a lot of monster knowledge, experience, and practice of the timing of the combos. And this is arguably what makes the Charge Blade one of the most complex weapons in all of Monster Hunter. So those are the major combos. In reality, you will really be alternating between most of these in your hunts. You should be in focus mode and perfect guard to charge your axe to get some good damage. In various situations, the super amped Element Discharge is a quick way to get some high damage out. It's obviously a very risky attack, but it does get the highest amount of damage out in a very short period of time. So after those, sometimes you switch back to your sword, get charge your Phials, then go back into the axe mode, or maybe just stay in and do another SAD. So a lot of variety, a lot of different combinations. It really will come down to your skill, your monster pattern understanding, team hunts, and timing. So that's about it for the beloved Charge Blade, guys. A really unique and exciting weapon. Absolutely one of my favorites in this game. So I hope you guys give it a try and enjoy it. Be sure to drop a comment for any other CB tips. This video was really about a lot of the basics here, so be sure to read the comments below, guys. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and keep hunting. SkySense is out.